Hello. Today is Friday, June 6th. Welcome to episode 461 of Fault Lines, the National Security Institute's podcast that gets you quickly up to speed 3 times a week on the national security and foreign policy debates shaking up America. I'm NSI Advisory Board member Lester Munson. I'm joined today by NSI Senior Fellows Matt Hayden and Morgan Vina, and NSI Not Senior Fellow Jessica Jones. Jones, why aren't you a
I'm not
senior
going to take
fellow?
that personally, Les. I'm not going to take that
Like,
personally.
you've been associated with NSI for a long time. You've played a key role for years, and you are not a senior fellow. Did you do something wrong?
I'm lurking in the shadows. I don't want too
I
much
think you're calling the
attention.
rest of us old, so I don't know if you should take that as an insult
Jess,
at
you need
all.
to lean in. Just lean in.
Yeah, go ahead. Lean in. Explain. What is it? You're like a junior fellow, for God's sake. How did that happen? Folks, it's a fun Friday. This may not be as serious as most of our episodes, but we're going to talk about the very interesting situation where the American president, Donald Trump, has had phone calls with the other two major leaders in the world, Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin, this week. And somehow that's not really leading the news today or this week. It's an interesting phenomenon, but we want to dig into the phone calls a little bit because they are important for U.S. national security. Of course, President Trump was talking to Vladimir Putin about the war in Ukraine. The Ukrainians famously struck at the Russian Air Force and did major damage a few days ago. Vladimir Putin evidently told Donald Trump that he was going to have to retaliate for that. And of course, President Trump has publicized that. He said something to the effect of he shouldn't do that, but he also said they may have to fight this out a little bit. And if I'm not mistaken, President Trump actually praised the Ukrainians for doing something tough and strong. So maybe something has changed a little bit here. It's of course not what people are expecting or hoping, which would be that President Trump would endorse more severe sanctions on Russia, particularly the Senate bill that is very bipartisan that would impose draconian sanctions on the Russians. He did not go in that direction. He said they may have to fight it out a little bit more. Matt, I want to go to you first on this question of what's going on in Ukraine and whether this is a significant turn here. Is it good? Is it bad? Is it neither? It's Fun Friday. Please have at it.
Well, it's one of those interesting times in a Trump administration where you start to feel an odd sensation of normalization, where the president is right smack in the middle of world leaders talking to him and him talking to the public at large about everything that they're saying. It's when you say you want transparency, this is what you get. At the same time, it's something that from the Ukrainian standpoint, there is a challenge about what's going to happen next. And on the world stage, you don't want anything to come out saying that the U.S. is letting this play out in the form of retaliation by the Russians as kind of entitled. And so you've got a tightrope there to both acknowledge that tensions are still high without pointing that tensions acted upon is something that we're in favor of. So there's still a please stop leading to deaths in the battlefield goal. It's just as these calculations of disarmament kind of go down the road, it has been a bit difficult. In the sense of it being Fun Friday, we will possibly see some of the shaping of how many bombers were actually blown up. You have anything from like 8 to 40. They apparently can't make anymore, and so you have an interesting manufacturing conversation out there as well. So it's been a lot of conversations that are jumping off the page just from this one incident.
Yeah, amazing stuff. Jones, I want to put you in a tough spot. President Trump talked to Xi Jinping, which seems to me like a big deal. These are the two most powerful countries in the world, two biggest economies, two biggest militaries, adversarial to some extent, possible future conflict coming. Is it a big deal that we had this phone call this week or not?
Not really. I'm going to go with not really. That's my vote. We, of course, are in the middle of a trade war, tariff war. We have a 90-day reprieve. This call happened, ostensibly, reports say, at the behest of President Trump. He wanted to get Xi on the phone. This is the first time they've talked directly on the phone since in his administration. And as Matt pointed out, he loves to get on the phone with folks. He is a direct talker. I like that about him. But what came from the call, that they're going to have more negotiations and talk more trade. So it was a story that wasn't a story. There are going to be more talks about tariffs, but it seems like the big issues that make a trade deal hard to hammer out are still there, right? It comes to rare earth, China stopping rare earth exports, and then the U.S. putting restrictions on cutting edge strips going to China. That was not a talking point that came out. How are those going to be resolved? You can throw in, the Secretary of Commerce, you can throw in the Treasury Secretary, but how that actually get resolved, that seems like a President Trump decision. And if he's not at the table, I'm not sure who's going to be able to make headway on those issues. I think we've got the 2 calls this week. I think President Trump's realizing, Putin and Xi, they're not, this isn't France or Canada. There's no parliamentary elections that are coming up. They're the heads of their own state. They control the narrative. They control their institutions. They control the economy. They're going to wait out President Trump in these kind of back and forths. And they can do that. And so he's finding it much difficult. They're not going to flinch. He's finding it much harder to negotiate with them than I think he thought at the offset of the administration.
Vina, I'm going to challenge you here.
The excitement that is just flowing from Morgan right now.
You're saving the best for last. Don't make me look bad here. So 2 phone calls, the biggest leaders in the world, somehow not the main story today. We're not necessarily going to talk about that story. But how is it that we find ourselves here in the United States of America, this global challenge before us, maybe a new axis of bad guys, Russia, China, Iran, North Korea. Trump talks to the 2 most important leaders in that group, and it's not really the news. It's not the news. What kind of world are we living in, Vina? What is happening here? Explain this.
So, Les, as the mother of a 4-year-old that is currently in the transition between school ending and camp on Monday, she's watching a lot of TV today. And one of the movies she's watching is Bad Guys. And so, needless to say, this is where my head goes. And I think we definitely need whoever is the maker of Bad Guys to literally have an animal, a bear for Putin, and some other animal, I don't know, a dragon for Xi, and they just need to make a movie out of this, because that's kind of what it feels like at this point. Anyway, I digress. Fun Friday, y'all.
Morgan's I've got my child with me. This is where I am.
Friday. Anyway, I guess the point being is that, yes, there's a ton going on in the U.S. right now. There's a lot going on in the news. And yet, at the same time, we also have a lot going on overseas, particularly national security, trade policy, foreign policy, you name it. The big takeaway here, I think, is that this is the first time Trump and Xi have actually gotten on the phone during this administration, and it's after this tariff war has started. The conversation revolved around some pretty important issues for the United States. Yes, tariffs, but also we're talking, chips, critical minerals, student visas. That's a perennial issue, it seems, these days, amongst many other things. And so I think, from a diplomatic perspective, it's important these conversations do take place. Trump has talked to Putin before. Jess, I take a little bit of a different track than you in terms of the phone call. I don't actually think that Trump is warming up to Zelensky or Ukraine at all, in the sense that he called them both children, and they just need to.
That was less. Don't attribute what Les said to me.
Children, and sometimes you just need to let them fight it out. That's not exactly heartwarming to me, but there are nevertheless these major conversations around the world happening, and the United States is front and center in them. I think what we'll have to see, and the important piece of this is going to be the follow-up, what actually comes of this. Is Trump going to go to Beijing? Is Xi going to try to, embarrass him as he does, as he so creatively does with, foreign leaders? And I think I'll be really interested to see sort of what takes place after these conversations and what those deliverables are. So the phone calls, yes, they're important, but I think what happens later because of them is going to be even more telling.
And don't forget how spicy it is now to make a visit to the White House, because you get to sit as the German chancellor next to the president while he gives readouts and zingers to the press for about an hour.
Well, I'm wondering who travels where. Like, is there actually going to be a trip during this administration, and who's doing it? Because, like, I don't think she's sitting in that hot seat. And I think Trump, even if he was, I think President Trump would be a little. I don't think he wouldn't be pulling out the zingers.
So
I don't think so.
I'm like of a couple minds here. This Fun Friday. It is, in addition to being Fun Friday, it's the 81st anniversary of D-Day today, and of course, Trump was sitting next to the German chancellor yesterday, talking about D-Day because the Mertz brought it up, and Trump said, "Well, it wasn't a very good day for you guys." And Mertz made the very interesting point. He said, "Well, actually, you guys liberated us from the Nazis, and so it was a good day for Germans."
Right back at you.
And so it's hard not to think about, perhaps one of the most important events in modern history, which was the retaking of Europe from the forces of darkness, while we're kind of dealing with soap opera and made-for-TV mini dramas. At the same time, so some deeply serious issues, of course.
Profound, Les. So profound.
Yeah, I love that he made us all do Fun Friday, and then he goes deep. This very reflective thought.
Well, I mean, you could say 60 years from now, this could be, reflecting back on conflict and having happy conversations about things
the day before something bad happens. Thanks, Matt. That's great.
Les, you also forgot, the anniversary of Tiananmen Square. So, you may want to include a reference.
Forget it. I just didn't mention it. But I'm going to bounce from there to the thing that we're not talking about, which is the fact that somehow the Putin and Xi calls are not the number one story. The number one story actually has entirely to do with domestic politics and the breach between President Trump and the guy who came up with the Doge idea, and which is directly related to the One Big Beautiful Bill, which is making its way through Congress right now, and the House passed it, and now it's becoming a kerfuffle between kind of the mainstream Republicans and maybe the more fiscally conservative Republicans. And this is all a wonderful distraction from this very political dilemma. And it's very interesting to see the leader of the Republican Party kind of be proactive in distracting people and using foreign policy as a way to kind of galvanize what he needs to do on the domestic policy front, because if that bill fails, it's a massive failure for the administration. It's their only real legislative piece of it on their agenda, and if it doesn't work, it's a big problem. And so he's using foreign policy issues, I think, to kind of keep the ball in the air for a lot of Senate Republicans to end up doing the right thing. I think it's going to end up moving, but I think it's holistically speaking, we need to see the current soap opera and latest episode of the Trump reality show in that context. Okay, that's a wrap. Thanks so much to Kelly Crowley, Taylor Lane, Claude Jennings, and the NSI staff for their help in producing today's episode. Join us on Monday, June 9th for another episode of Fault Lines, the National Security Institute's podcast that gets you smart fast on the national security and foreign policy debate shaking up America. We are now on YouTube. Check out our channel for a video of today's episode. If you like what you heard or saw, be sure to rate, review, and subscribe.